A little bit earlier, not exactly necessarily answering the questions directly. Well, delighted to say I'm now joined to at least try and get to the bottom of some of the big questions being posed today in Parliament by Dr Craig Prescott. He is a UK constitutional and law and politics expert and a lecturer in law at Bangor University. Good afternoon to you, Professor Prescott. First of all, just explain to me, if you can, because it is pretty complicated, even for us Westminster observers, what are the rules at the moment when it comes to second jobs for MPs and this idea about using potentially those second jobs to lobby on behalf of those companies?
Good afternoon. It's good to join you. In principle, MPs can have a second job, but they must declare that they have a second job and declare how much they earn from that second job. But what they cannot do is use that second job, that outside interest they have, and combine it with their position as an MP, and then engage in lobbying on behalf of whoever they have that second job with. So there's a fine line here between being a consultant, perhaps using your political knowledge and perhaps learning from about another sector as a consultant for someone outside Parliament, but then sort of ending up as a paid lobbyist. And it's about finding where that line should be and ensuring that MPs stay on the right side of that line at all times. But the rules are very clear that if you do engage in paid lobbying, that's a breach of the Code of Conduct, and the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards will investigate that whenever any allegations arise.
And in saying that, that's obviously many people feel, well, not many people, clearly the Commons Standards Commissioner and indeed the committee felt that Owen Paterson crossed that fine line, as you put it. So there is this debate this afternoon where lots of parliamentarians are calling essentially for MPs to lose that chance of having a second job. And you have to remember, many MPs earn hundreds of thousands of pounds a year on top of their MP salary, don't they, from doing particularly consulting work. Is there an argument, would you say, Craig, for MPs being allowed to have a second job? What is the argument that those MPs put forward to say, you know what, yes, being an MP is busy, but also I'm entitled to pursue another career at the same time?
Well, there's several things. I think one difficulty is what do we mean by a second job? Because there are some MPs who are hospital doctors who work at a hospital for some of their time. Others, if you're a lawyer, you do need to engage in the legal profession still to, say, retain your practicing certificate as a solicitor or as a barrister. So some may need to still engage with their profession in order to remain a part of that profession. And generally, we would quite like our MPs to have a broad range of experience. And if we get to a position where we say, well, as soon as you become an MP, that's it, you can't do anything else, that may make becoming an MP very unattractive to the sorts of people we would quite like in the House. So again, it's about framing the rules and finding the right balance here. And maybe we just haven't quite got that right at the moment.
Now, of course, it is different in the House of Lords, isn't it? Because peers don't get an annual salary; they get an allowance every day for when they turn up. But we then saw this story, a different story, it must be said, though, in the Sunday Times yesterday about cash for honours around Conservative peers. And instead of focusing on that particularly, yet here we are again, aren't we, with questions over the House of Lords, who's in it. What do you have to do to be able to get into it? It is a chamber that almost all political parties say that they're up for reforming, but reform never seems to happen.
Yes, it has been described as the Bermuda Triangle of British politics, in that all political parties over the years have proposed reforms, but they never really see the light of day. Indeed, we could go as far back as 1911, where some reforms were made to the powers of the House of Lords, and these were only meant to be a temporary measure pending the introduction of an elected second chamber. And over 100 years on, that still hasn't happened. Clearly, the issue here is that we've moved towards a predominantly appointed House of Lords, and we've relied effectively on the good sense of the leaders of our political parties to nominate the right sorts to become members of the House of Lords. And maybe that process is breaking down, and maybe we need to look at removing the powers of patronage from party leaders. It's not just the Prime Minister of the day, it's sort of the leader of the Labour Party, Liberal Democrat parties, and so on. They also put names forward. Or maybe we look more broadly about reforming the House of Lords, perhaps on a regional basis, increasing regional representation in the House of Lords. And that might marry along with the government's levelling up agenda, perhaps increasing the voice of the North and maybe Scotland and Wales in terms of ensuring there's representation of the Union into a second chamber. One criticism at the moment is that it's quite London-centric, given its nature. And so there might be an opportunity there for a government with some imagination to do something with the House of Lords and taking this as an opportunity.